Well, within the last few minutes, one of Mike Lynch's neighbours has spoken to us. Ruth Leigh said he leaves a hole that can never be filled and that he was an amazing man, full of integrity. Let's listen to what she said to us.
Mike is our next door neighbour. Mike and Angela bought Loudham Hall, which is next door to our house, about 15 years ago, when their girls were the same age as our two oldest. And from the start, they were fantastic neighbours, very friendly, very down to earth, really good neighbours.
When you say we're good neighbours, can you just paint a bit of a picture about how Mike was a particularly good neighbour to you?
Well, in this sort of very small rural community, everybody knows everybody. And Mike, from the very start, made a point of getting to know everybody, maintained the fences, extended the estate, looked after the menagerie, and really seemed to invest in the place, which was lovely because it's a beautiful part of the world. And I think one of the first things we noticed about Mike and Angela was that even though they're wealthy, influential people, they never put any airs or graces on. You know, they'd always take the trouble to remember your name, ask after your partner, your children, and that they didn't have to do that. And we always had a great deal of respect for them in that way.
You said to me earlier, you sort of said he had a lot of integrity. Do you mind talking, if you have to say that word again to me, because I think that's just a lovely way to describe somebody, and kind of what makes you say that?
I think that was one of the reasons. He could have gone to America, he could have gone to the other markets, he could have conducted himself in a different way, but he gave to charity very generously. He was a non-executive director of a lot of things, including the BBC. He was always very moral, I would say. It's an unfashionable word, but he never, I don't think, played on his position. He was generous, he was humble, and as I say, I think he was full of integrity.
We've had it confirmed today, this morning, that sadly it has been confirmed that Mike has passed away. What are your thoughts when you hear the tragic news?
Genuinely, it's really hard to articulate those thoughts. I think for me, the cruelest irony of it all, it would be a tragedy whichever way you came at it, but the cruelest irony is that he'd spent years, over a decade of his life fighting that case in America. He was extradited, you know. I'm sure he was not guilty of that. He wasn't. I'm convinced of it. A man of that integrity wouldn't have done something like that. And he just won it. I think he was quoted as saying he had a 1% chance of winning that court case in America, and he won it anyway. And he was free. And so poignantly, he talked about his life beginning again. And the whole point about this trip to Italy was that he was taking his friends and family to say thank you. So for this to have come from nowhere, you know, a freak storm, no one could have foreseen it, no one could have done very much about it, I suppose. That makes it all the worse for me. It's even more of a tragedy to know that it happened at such a time. You know, I just think that's the saddest thing I've ever heard.
And his daughter's still missing, although his wife, who's been found alive.
Yes, Angela is alive, which, you know, is wonderful. But and Esme wasn't on the boat, I don't think. But to hear that, you know, our own child has just turned 18, got their GCSE, their A-level results. Again, words fail me. What Angela must be going through, I genuinely cannot articulate what that must be like.
How do you think you described everyone as being a very close-knit community here? Can you give a sense of, you've obviously just described your relationship with Mike, but can you give a sense of what Mike was like within the village? Because it's easy to think, you know, someone coming in as an outsider like myself, that you might not be aware, but it sounds like, for what you said, he was very involved. And just if you give any examples, it's always lovely to hear.
Of course. He always gave the reading at the Remembrance Day service at All Saints in Wickham, which is our parish church in the village next door. He was out and about. You know, we'd see him driving past, he'd always wave. He went to the pub, I believe, which was lovely. If he went for a walk and he ran into one of you, he'd always have a chat, which was great. And he and Angela used to throw a cocktail party every year in June on the lawn of the hall, and we would all be invited, which was lovely. Very generous hospitality. And again, he didn't have to do that. So you'd be welcome. There'd be drinks. There'd be lovely food. They would walk around and chat to everybody. Their friends would be there. The children would be there. And it was an unlooked for thing. He didn't have to do it, any of that, but he did anyway. And I think that was something that we all appreciated, that he took the time to be part of the community, even though he didn't live here full time.
It sounds like it would be a real sort of mark and a hole in the community.
I think so, yeah. And I think in life generally, they touched a lot of people. They were well thought of. They were kind, generous, hospitable people. And obviously, just apart from the fact that he's one of the most remarkable technical people we've ever produced in Britain, and obviously from a business point of view, he's been very successful. I think from a personal point of view, losing somebody so kind and compassionate and full of integrity must always leave a hole that can't be filled.